Hello, it's Craig Wilkie here, and at the last ICT Working Party meeting, we got together and we pulled together some plans around how we want to give young people better access to Google, to the services that we provide through Atmos at Real. We've come up with some ideas and I've tested them on a technical level to make sure that the ideas actually work. Really what today, this video is all about is giving you that very basic overview of what's possible, and what I'm really hoping is that people will watch this video, feed back to myself, feed back to people on the working party around what they liked about the idea and the concept and what they thought needed to be improved or refined. So we're all used to using Staff Hub and using Staff Hub as a gateway to all of the resources and support that is provided through Google or Atmos. Things like email, the Google Drive, access to engine rooms, but students don't really have that same experience. So what we've done is we've put together, myself and the ICT team have put together a bit of a test environment so you can explore that and you can see how it might work. And then what we're encouraging you to do is to give some feedback to us. And you can just give feedback through Service Desk by raising a ticket, or of course you can email your ICT Working Party representative. At the moment is Dot Rogers, or the deputy, which at the moment is Richard Ball. So at the moment we've set up a link on Staff Hub, which is right at the bottom of the page and which says here beta. When you click into that area, it takes you through into Student Hub. Now what we're proposing is on the websites that we have a link, something like this student portal, and that will take the students to the Student Hub. And that's accessible to them through the use of their Google Atmos username and password. Our proposal is that when students start at Real Education, we expect them to be given that username and password, or certainly we expect the learning manager to be given that username and password. So this service would be available to them by default, just as it is the staff, and they won't have to request this specially. So the students are now into Student Hub. One of the first questions I've got is, this is probably not the right name. And what we'd like to do is we'd like to encourage you to have a conversation with your students around, what they would look to find in an intranet page like this for them. What information, resources, what services might be available for them. We'd love the students to get involved in thinking around the design and the development of this, and obviously staff as well, but we're really interested to know what students make of this and how they might be able to shape how this looks and feels. So let's just have a very quick look. There are 3 components that we think in Google Drive will work a treat with our students. The first is something called My Workbook. Next to each of these links you do see a description that will help to remind you of what they're there for. And again, this is a proposal, so we're really keen to hear your views on this. So in My Workbook, if I click through, I'm clicking through as a teacher, and what I can see in there are folders which will contain the work of all the students at Real who are using Google Atmos as a way of storing their work. This is an example. For example, we've got Daniel Jones here, fictitious student, and you'd be able to go into his folder and to see his work. Now Daniel hasn't been very busy at the moment, but you get the idea that Daniel's work can be organised by Daniel in this folder. The concept here is by default every member of staff has access to Daniel's work, but only Daniel, in terms of students, can see Daniel's work. The other students can't see Daniel's work. And there'll be a simple logo. Just as we've got the text here, we'll turn this text into a nice logo for Workbook, and the students will all go in and click the same logo. But through the sort of clever setup in Google, they'll only see their work. So they'll all click on the same link, but they'll be presented with a different experience, which is unique for them. So that's the Workbook section. We're going to be placing inside the Workbook section an archive area, which only staff can see. And that will just mean that if Daniel does some great work, you can make a copy of it, and you can add that copy into the archive. So if Daniel decides that he doesn't want that work and he deletes it, because it's important, it might be that you're keeping it for an assessment, there'll be that sort of hidden folder within his folder that he can't see, but which will contain his work that you've saved and secured. As well as a workbook, we've got links to My Resources, and again Daniel would click on that link, he'd go through into his resources area. Again, he would only see his resources, but all staff would see every student's resources. I would see this working in the sense that we could add documents, we could add presentations, worksheets, Word documents that Daniel needs to complete into this resources for Daniel, and he could then update those and add to those. So this is very much his resources, his worksheets and information that staff will populate themselves. And Daniel can't delete information from here. So if I put a worksheet in there, Daniel can't have a bit of fun with me and just delete it. He can make a copy of it and he can edit it, but he can't delete the work that goes into resources. Final one now is a link to the Real Resources library. And the resources library is going to contain folders which are relating to either subjects or perhaps projects. It might be groups. For example, Real Leicester might particularly want a folder in here, or there might be a particular group or charity event. Any sort of theme or area could have a folder in here. And the way that we're going to make sure this is tidy and kept up to date and appropriate is that the area or subject lead or leaders will be responsible for keeping that up to date and editing that. So these are very much resources that could be used across the whole company, and they'll be managed by the subject leader or the project leader themselves. So along with those links into the drive, there's a few other things that we've added in because we think they're really important. There is this concept now of the student drive with student work and student resources in it. And what is really important to note is that students don't have access to the staff drive that we've been used to using, but staff do have access into the student drive. So don't worry about how all that works. We've tested it and trialed it, and we're absolutely completely sure that there is no connectivity between the student drive and the staff drive, so the students can't get access to that. In addition to access to the Atmos Hub, which I've just demonstrated, on this Student Hub page that you're looking at now, we think it should contain logos and links to a variety of other services like email, like engine rooms or diaries and calendars. But again, we want your thoughts and advice from the students around how that develops and how that looks and feels. There's a few things that we've made sure that we've switched off for students, and these include things like the ability to email outside of the organisation. So I'll be placing in the newsletter some ideas that we've had around the restrictions on students. By default, students will have access to the drive, so the Atmos drive which I've just shown you. They'll have limited access to email, so they'll only be able to email internally, and they will have access to a calendar. Apart from that, there will be very limited access to the rest of the Google services, and we're doing that because we think it's important to take a step at a time. And that's not to say that we wouldn't open up further services as time moves on, but we just want to keep it very limited and restricted for the initial pilot of this piece of work. And then obviously as time moves on, we'll look to, in consultation with staff and students, open up new services if that's appropriate and safe to do so. So I think this is a really exciting opportunity. We took 3 years ago the decision not to just leave the Google Drive as a bit of a free-for-all, but to develop the system of going to Google Drive through the use of the Staff Hub and then onto other services. And I stand by that decision as one that means that the systems that we have in place are far more organised and easier for staff to use than they might have been if it had been a free-for-all at the beginning. I think this is a new opportunity for us to work with students and go through that process once again, and to make sure that we get it right from the outset. So I'd really encourage you to reflect on this video, to encourage other people in your team to look and explore this concept by clicking through and having a play with some of these features, and giving us some feedback. So hopefully you found this useful. Sorry it's a bit of a long video, but it's quite an important one, and it's one that we think in time probably our students and yourself as staff at Real will be using many times a day. So we want to get it right, and we also want to bring the students with us by making sure that they're really at the heart of this process, and that we design and develop these ideas around what they need in terms of developing and supporting them. There's also a big agenda here around giving them tools that they'll be using in the real world, and providing them with a safe and structured way to start to get to grips with some of these tools. Of course, these are tools they're just using all the time at home, or many are using all the time at home, and they're using them without restrictions and without all of the safety guidance and care that we put in. So I think it's about being realistic and balanced when we think about what services we want to offer to the students and what services that we can use as staff. So hopefully you found this useful. Do give us your feedback, and thanks for watching.